Hi guys, sometimes I consider the idea of asking my GP for blood pressure medication whenever I see Michael Gove or Arlene Foster appearing on TV to talk about Brexit. So you can imagine my delight when both appeared on the same friggin' podcast. Gove and Foster, being failed politicians and devout Brexiteers, were looking for someone to blame for the whole sorry mess. And while they could have pointed their finger at themselves, which would have been finally a gesture of honesty, they instead decided that the scapegoat will be Theresa May. Word of warning, there may be some angry responses coming up.
As you mentioned, we were involved in Brexit negotiations. Yeah. I was in Theresa's cabinet at the time. When Theresa was facing pressure from the European Commission to go through a particular gateway in the Brexit process, she agreed to a set of provisions to try to ensure that there was no border on the island of Ireland. Now, Boris and I expressed one or two concerns to her at the time, but in the end, we acquiesced. Were we squishes?
I was just going to say, you were concerned. I mean, what did you do about it at the time? I mean, what happened? Because, as you know, the way in which it developed meant that it was very, very difficult for unionism in Northern Ireland.
No, it was actually really good for unionism in Northern Ireland because it was the UK-wide backstop. So the UK as a whole would have stayed in the single market for an indefinite period of time. Now, was it permanent? No, but it could have been permanent, you know, as we saw with Brexit can kicking. But the alternative was, of course, the Windsor Framework. So Northern Ireland stayed part of the single market when it came to goods, and the UK didn't as a whole. So GB, if they want to sell goods into Northern Ireland, they would have to be checked at the border. That was the consequence. Because what she's trying to say here is that there was some alternative. No, there was no alternative. Now, the reason Brexiteers didn't like it was because, well, they wanted out of the single market. They didn't want anything more to do with Europe. So they were like, no, we can't go along with this. But anyone with their head screwed on realised that, well, this is going to impact Northern Ireland. And the Brexiteers, like Arlene Foster and the DUP, I keep saying, their love of Brexit is stronger than their hatred of the EU and Ireland is stronger than any love for the Union. You know, the Union was really threatened by this, by leaving the single market and the customs union, resulting in where are we going to put this border? At the end of the day, it was put in the Irish Sea. But this was something that was raised as a concern before the Brexit referendum, and the likes of Arlene Foster and the DUP just dismissed it as scaremongering.
Well, I think it was a mistake. I think that Boris and I should have been a bit more robust at that point. But what I felt was Theresa has had an incredibly difficult time over the last few months.
Hadn't we all?
I also felt, speaking personally, I'd acquired a reputation, whether or not deserved, as a bit of a troublemaker. And I felt that I owed it to her to give her the benefit of the doubt. I do wish that I had been clearer with her and with others, that I felt that she didn't need to accept the premise that the EU were asserting, that there were different ways of resolving the admittedly intricate issues that existed when you are going to have one part of an island within the EU and one part of an island without.
No. Northern Ireland is not part of the EU. Northern Ireland is part of the single market when it comes to goods. This is very important. This is a very big difference. Northern Ireland does not send people to Brussels to represent them. Northern Ireland is not part of the Eurozone. Northern Ireland is not part of the EU. It's part of the single market when it comes to goods. That's the fundamental difference. Now, once again, either Michael Gove doesn't understand this or he's pretending not to understand this. And I honestly don't know which is worse.
It's almost as if there aren't any borders anywhere else in the European Union.
My goodness, you used to be the First Minister of Northern Ireland, and you're suggesting that it's as if there aren't borders in other parts of Europe. You understand the difference between a border in other parts of Europe and the border on the island of Ireland or the border in the Irish Sea. You understand that. You understand the necessity not to have a hard border on the island of Ireland. You can't have that infrastructure because of the Good Friday Agreement. Now, we have to remember that the DUP were against the Good Friday Agreement when it was first signed. They don't give a crap about border infrastructure. They were probably hoping for that. That's what they were campaigning for, I believe, when it came to Brexit. They were hoping that the UK as a whole would leave the single market, and this would result in a hard border on the island of Ireland, and it would become a problem for the Republic of Ireland and the EU, even though they didn't vote for Brexit. That's what they were hoping for. Now, many people told them this was a mistake, and they just didn't give a crap, and now they're complaining about the consequences.
Of course, we know there are.
Quite.
And of course, there are solutions.
Yes.
But those solutions weren't taken up.
But I think it's...
What solutions? What solutions? There were no solutions. No practical, workable solutions. We heard Michael Gove and Boris Johnson, and we heard Jacob Rees-Mogg talking about electronic borders. They couldn't point to one. They couldn't give us an example of one that was actually working. And of course, if you had an electronic border and it was attacked, then what would happen? It would have to be protected. That would result in infrastructure on the island of Ireland, on the border between the Republic and Northern Ireland, which is against the Good Friday Agreement. Not just the spirit, but the word.
For me, it's a lesson that sometimes, if you have made a couple of stands and you've made some noise, while people might think, oh, good for him, or who the hell is he? It becomes more difficult sometimes because there's a delicate balance between the perception that you are standing up for your beliefs and the sense that actually you are just trouble.
Yeah. No, it's not about that. It's not about beliefs. It's about reality. See, the Brexiteers thought if we act tough, the European Union will back down. But the European Union said we can't have physical infrastructure on the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic. So what is your alternative? And they went, we'll find an alternative, or we're just going to appear tough. The European Union and Ireland were acting on a position of reality. I'm not saying that to be biased. It was the reality of the Good Friday Agreement. While Brexiteers in England don't give a crap about Northern Ireland, don't seem to understand the Good Friday Agreement, and they were taking it as some sort of negotiating position. No, it was not a negotiating position. It was reality.
Theresa, in everything that she said and in the way that she made the argument in the House of Commons and around the cabinet table, always put the union at the heart of the case for the Brexit deal that she secured. Do you think there was a sort of a bit of a contrast between what Theresa thought she was achieving and the reality on the ground?
Yes, I think she made...
No, she didn't. She actually had a real concern for the union. She was trying to protect the union more than Boris Johnson, Jacob Rees-Mogg or Michael Gove or Arlene Foster were. Because the UK-wide backstop would have kept Northern Ireland in its current position. But now, as a result of rejecting that position, the consequence was Northern Ireland stays part of the single market when it comes to goods, and checks have to be carried out on goods moving from GB to Northern Ireland. That wouldn't have been the case under the UK-wide backstop.
A mistake in her understanding of Northern Ireland. This idea that there could be no border on the island of Ireland, when of course we have a monetary border, we have a taxation border.
Is it a physical border? It's not a frigging physical border, you idiot. The Good Friday Agreement is about physical infrastructure, not monetary or one against smuggling. It's about a physical border. Now, see, this is where my frustration gets to a fever pitch, because Arlene Foster, I believe, is speaking to an audience who have not read the Good Friday Agreement. So on the surface, it sounds, this sounds reasonable. You know, obviously there must be some sort of border between Northern Ireland and the Republic, because, you know, the police have to carry out checks, or there's a monetary border, you know, because you're talking about two different currencies and stuff like that. Yes, but the Good Friday Agreement is not concerned with that. It's concerned with infrastructure on the border. Is there infrastructure on the border? No, at the moment. Do the police on both sides carry out checks? Yes. But the infrastructure is temporary infrastructure. Setting up a police road sign, and that's it for a few hours, and then it's gone. That's not permanent infrastructure.
We've always had a border with the Republic of Ireland. Ask the people who smuggle across it.
This is deeply dishonest, because obviously she knows. Michael Gove, he's an idiot. He doesn't understand Northern Ireland. He doesn't understand the Good Friday Agreement will allow him to get away with this. But Arlene Foster knows right well. She knows completely what she's talking about, and she knows exactly what she's saying is absolute tripe.
So the idea that there wasn't going to be a border on the island of Ireland was a mistake, and it could have been dealt with alternative arrangements, which were put forward, and they were dismissed, which was wrong.
They were not put forward. There was no reasonable. You heard people say, "Oh, there won't be a problem. There won't be a problem. There won't be a problem." The Irish government and the EU were saying, "Okay, but do you have an actual solution? There won't be a problem." And then eventually it came to, well, actually, when they were really pushed, we'll have an electronic border. We'll have drones. Okay, do you have a working example of this? Can a drone scan a truck to see what's inside, to make sure there isn't counterfeit goods coming into the EU, into this, into the leaving the Northern Ireland and coming into the Republic of Ireland, leaving the UK and entering the single market? Is there a way to check, trucks crossing the border? No. Okay. Do you have any examples of something? Well, there's perhaps an example in the US we saw that was in a movie. Like, this is all they had. So the EU has said, we can't work with things like this. We can't work with hypotheticals. You have to show us a working example. But they couldn't come up with a working example because there isn't one. Or they were talking about, well, maybe in the future. Yes, okay, in the future, but we need something to work today. If you don't have something, the alternative is the Irish Sea border. And while Boris Johnson and the Brexiteers sort of hemmed and hawed a bit about it, in the end they went along with it because they cared more about Brexit than the Union.
After Theresa, obviously there was Boris. Boris famously came to the DUP conference.
He did indeed.
Got a standing ovation.
Not sure he'd get it now, Michael.
No,
Boris Johnson is a compulsive, pathological liar. He has always been a compulsive, pathological liar. And for some reason, he was invited to the DUP to speak at their conference, and they believed that Boris Johnson would tell the truth. When I saw Boris Johnson there, I was like, he must be laughing his arse off. Look at these idiots here inviting me to speak at their conference, and they actually think I'm telling the truth. They actually think I care about the union. They actually think I care about the DUP. Boris Johnson said to a number of business owners that were, I believe, invited by the DUP, that if anyone asked them to fill out paperwork, to tear it up and throw it in the bin. How well did that work out?
That's what I was going to say. So, to what extent do you feel that the deal that Boris secured and everything that flowed from it, how difficult did it make managing your party? Because you've welcomed him to number 10. He's won this big election victory. Winning the election victory means that the DUP's sort of power in Westminster is diminished because he doesn't need the DUP in the way that Theresa did. So how did that change the way in which you managed the party?
Well, of course, he came in first before the election,
yes.
the big election victory, and he engaged with us. I have to say, he engaged a lot more with us than Theresa had ever done. However, he again misunderstood what was going on. I have to say...
No, he did not misunderstand. Boris Johnson knew fully well he didn't care. I keep saying this. When it came to the union or Brexit, Brexiteers chose Brexit on every frigging occasion. I really don't understand why unionists in Northern Ireland don't realise this reality. They've been given numerous examples of this. The Conservatives don't give a crap about Northern Ireland. Brexiteers don't give a crap about the union. It was an English nationalist project. So why would they care about Scotland? Why would they care about Northern Ireland? They don't. They never will. Really, it's frustrating to respond to all of this because you have somebody who probably hopes that the Conservatives care about Northern Ireland, that the Conservatives care about the union. It's, a weird sort of fantasy that the DUP have. And they had an opportunity, in a sense, to protect their position, to keep Northern Ireland closer to the United Kingdom with Theresa May, but they threw her under a bus. Because I keep saying this, the DUP's hatred of Ireland and the EU is stronger than any love for the Union. If they truly cared about the Union, they wouldn't have campaigned for Brexit. They wouldn't have supported Brexit. They would be rejecting Brexit today, but they're not. They hate Ireland and they hate the EU, and that hatred is stronger than any love for the Union. So they'll in a sense, they're going to watch the Union fall apart, and they'll be asking, why is this happening? And they'll never look themselves in the mirror and say, actually, we did this. We had opportunities to protect the Union, and we threw that away because we wanted our Brexit. We got into bed with people who don't give a crap about the Union, don't give a crap about Northern Ireland, who are English nationalists, and we honestly believed, or we hoped, that they would protect us when they had no intention of doing so. We put trust in Boris Johnson. And now he's burnt us. And we're still not realizing that it was a bad idea. Because we still believe that we can salvage something from this, when both political parties, Labour and the Conservatives, have moved on from that. They've moved on from Northern Ireland. They want a better relationship with the European Union, both parties. And if Northern Ireland's in the way, Northern Ireland will be forgotten about. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.